I'm 69 years old and I've spent nearly 5 decades baking bread from memory, not recipes. If you came into my kitchen, you'd smell rosemary and yeast and maybe a trace of rosewater from the soap I've used since 1983. You'd see crocheted doilies that once sat under jam jars now faded to ivory. You might think I live a quiet life. You'd be right. But quiet doesn't mean peaceful. My name is Lillian Grace Holloway. Some still call me Mrs. Holloway, especially the folks at the farmer's market. Others just call me Grandma Lil, though my own grandchildren haven't used that name in years. Not since their parents, my children taught them to forget me. But before all of that, I was simply a wife, a mother, a woman who believed that love, the slow, ordinary kind, could keep a family together. Until 3 months ago. That was the day we laid my husband Arthur into the earth. That was also the day I realized my children didn't just drift from me. They'd been carving a path away from me for years. I just hadn't noticed the blade. Arthur had been ill for 16 months, kidney cancer aggressive. The doctors called it a ticking clock. No cure, only comfort. And so we did our best, he and I, in the only home we'd ever owned. The house he'd built with his own hands when we were 26 and hopeful. The same home where our son Jonathan learned to ride his bike on the gravel driveway and where our daughter Erica once painted a bluebird mural in the hallway with her finger paints. We didn't tell the kids right away. Arthur didn't want to worry them. They've got their lives, he'd set his voice thinner each week. Let them keep flying for a while longer. I agreed, though I knew in my gut that silence with our children never bought peace, only delay. By the time Jonathan finally came, it was already too late for long talks. Arthur could barely sit up. Jonathan brought flowers, the kind you buy at airports, and wore a look like he was visiting an old client, polite, formal, disconnected. He stayed a night, 2 at most. Erica arrived after the funeral, sweeping into the house in heels too high for our dirt paths, speaking too loud for a room that still held his scent. Her perfume filled the air, but her grief felt rehearsed. Real tears maybe, but not for the right reasons. Mom Jonathan had said the evening after we buried Arthur, his tone clipped. I wanted to go over the estate with you, just to help you sort things out. I know this must be overwhelming. Overwhelming. What overwhelmed me was how neatly he'd folded his suit jacket over the chair before opening his laptop. What overwhelmed me was that he asked about bank accounts before asking how I was sleeping. And what stunned me most was that he already had a plan. Arthur had always believed in paper trails, wills, deeds, tax returns filed before the deadline. But in his final months when morphine softened his edges and the cancer made him speak slower, he'd asked me not to worry about it. It's all in the file cabinet, he whispered one night, his hand cool in mine. But you already know it's yours. You lived it with me. Yes, I knew. I knew how to run the orchard, pay the workers, balance the books. I'd done it with him every season since 1975. I could plant a tree, raise it, and prune it like a child. But Jonathan and Erica didn't see that. They saw a widow with aching knees and a house too large for one person. Retirement communities are lovely. Mom Erica chirped the next morning. You'll have friends, bingo nights, Zumba. Zumba. I was still washing Arthur's coffee cup from the day before and trying not to break apart when she mentioned Zumba. I have friends, I said, wiping my hands on the dish towel, and I have things to do. But it's too much now, Jonathan insisted. The house, the orchard. We've already spoken to someone who could manage the sale. It's a good time for developers and the land could go for millions. Millions. They said it like a promise, like an escape. I stared at them, these adults I once fed, clothed, and read stories to at night, now speaking to me like a client blocking their next move. We found Dad's signed letter, Jonathan said, pulling out a document. He gave us the authority to handle the estate. He wanted things to be smooth for you, to start fresh. Fresh. I read the signature too neat, too firm, not Arthur's shaky hand from his final weeks. Something dark curled inside me then, a suspicion, a hurt, a knowledge I couldn't yet prove but already believed. You had him sign this while he was sedated. Jonathan looked away. Erica blinked too fast. Mom, he knew what he wanted, and we're doing this for you. You'll be comfortable. No more stress. Later that night, while they thought I was resting, I found the suitcase they'd packed for me. 2 changes of clothes, a small bottle of lotion, my blood pressure pills. No books, no photos. Nothing of my life, only what they assumed I'd need in a place where old women go to be managed. And when morning came, they stood by the door with keys in hand, speaking too brightly, too quickly. There's a place just 2 towns over, Erica said. Sunny Acres, it's lovely. I'm not going, I told them, pouring my coffee with shaking hands. You have to, Jonathan said. The papers are signed. The sale closes next week. You can't live here anymore. They decided, without me, without truth. They weren't taking me to a retirement home. They were removing me. And as I looked into Jonathan's eyes, I saw nothing of Arthur in him. Not the man who'd rise before dawn to tend the trees. Not the man who once cried when Erica broke her arm and said it should have been him. No. In those eyes, I saw a cold certainty, the kind that comes from spreadsheets and silent deals made in hotel conference rooms. I need to get my medication, I said softly, and my photo albums. They nodded, relieved. But I wasn't going to get photos. I was going to get something they didn't know I had. A deed, a secret, a plan. I moved through my house slowly, though every step was deliberate. My bones protested they always did these days, but I didn't let the ache show. Pain was no stranger here. I'd carried it through childbirth, through miscarriages I never told the kids about, through Arthur's long fading goodbye. Now I carried it like armor. In the bathroom, I opened the mirrored cabinet and reached behind the cough syrups and expired ointments. My hand found the metal latch nearly invisible built by Arthur in the late 80s, after someone broke into the Miller's farmhouse down the road. We'd been cautious ever since. Inside was a small velvet pouch, a folded envelope, and a worn manila folder that smelled faintly of lavender and ink. I took all of it and slipped them into my purse. Then I opened the drawer beneath the sink and pulled out a plastic bag of cash we'd kept in case of emergency. Arthur had always believed in cash. Machines break. Banks freeze, he'd say. But paper talks. He'd laughed when he said it, but his eyes always held truth. I went next to the bedroom, the one they thought I'd never sleep in again. The closet still held his flannel shirts. I inhaled one cedar and the faintest trace of lemon oil and smiled despite myself. Arthur always insisted that life should smell clean even when it felt messy. Behind those shirts was the fireproof box we'd agreed to keep locked always. I opened it and pulled out the original deed to 16 acres of land in my name, my maiden name, Lillian Grace Monroe. The acreage sat on the southern slope of our orchard, nestled against the stream that irrigated the entire farm. Arthur and I had bought it early in our marriage with the little money we had saved before the orchard took off. Just in case, he'd said, a safety net. Turns out it wasn't just a net. It was a noose for them. Downstairs, Jonathan was scrolling through his phone, standing near the kitchen table, like he was waiting for a taxi. Erica was sitting by the window applying lipstick. She'd always been beautiful. Charming, too. I used to worry she'd mistake charm for character. I was right to worry. All set, Mom, she chirped as she capped the lipstick. Yes, I replied, let's go. I didn't flinch as she took my arm, guiding me like a nurse leading a patient to their last appointment. Jonathan carried the small suitcase, and I left the house with only a glance over my shoulder. The porch sagged just slightly on the left. Arthur had meant to fix it last summer. The geraniums by the door were starting to bloom. The red ones were his favorite. They didn't ask where I wanted to sit in the car. They just opened the door and ushered me into the back seat like a child. The SUV smelled like cologne and synthetic leather. I buckled in without a word, folding my hands over my purse. As we pulled away from the orchard, I looked back through the tinted glass. Rows of apple trees, still bare-limbed in the early spring, stood tall like sentinels. Trees we'd grafted, pruned, harvested from year after year. Each one had a name in Arthur's head. He treated them like family. And now the real family was selling them off to the highest bidder. We passed Millbridge High School, where I'd once baked cookies for fundraisers. Then the church where Arthur had played Santa every year, until the chemo stole his beard and his strength. I watched it all blur by like a memory trying to forget itself. But I would not forget. About 20 minutes into the drive, the car slowed and pulled over. Jonathan didn't say a word as he shifted into park. We were on a narrow shoulder overlooking a vacant lot of dry grass and wildflowers. No buildings, no cars, just wind and weeds. This is your stop, he said, turning slightly. I blinked. Excuse me. Erica reached back from the front seat, her voice tight. There's a gas station about a mile down that road. You can call someone there. I didn't move. You're serious? You'll be fine, Jonathan said flatly. You've got your pills, some cash. We didn't leave you with nothing. My throat tightened, not with grief, not even shock. With clarity. This was the moment they stopped pretending. No soft lies, no fake smiles, just abandonment dressed as practicality. I see, I whispered. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Jonathan added, reaching across to open my door. We did what we had to. What you had to, I repeated. To a woman who made your birthday cakes, who sewed your Halloween costumes, who sat beside your hospital beds. Things change, he said coldly. Yes, I agreed, swinging my legs out and stepping onto the gravel. And so do people. I stood still, clutching my purse. The sun was low. The wind picked up, brushing the hem of my coat against my calves. Erica looked almost guilty. Her eyes were shiny, and for a second she reached for the door handle. But she didn't get out. "We're sorry," she called through the open window. "No, you're not," I said softly. Then they drove off, kicking up dust. And I was alone, or so they thought. I reached into my purse and pulled out the flip phone I'd kept hidden for years. The screen flickered the way old electronics do, but it worked. I dialed the only number I'd ever bothered to memorize besides Arthur's. "Ray's Gas and Supply," said a familiar voice. "Ray, it's Lillian Holloway." A pause. Then Lillian, "You all right? You sound like you're out of breath." "I'm down near Old Creek Road. Can you send someone to pick me up?" "I'll come myself. Stay where you are." I clicked the phone shut and exhaled. In my hands was not just a purse. It was a vault of secrets and the truth my children had forgotten. I'd been poor before, abandoned before, alone before, but never powerless. Ray arrived 10 minutes later in his rusted pickup, the one with the dented fender and a thermos that always smelled like burnt coffee. He didn't ask questions, just opened the door and said, "Climb in, Lil." I did. We drove in silence for a few minutes before he asked where to. "To town," I said. "To Hilda's bed and breakfast." "She's still got that upstairs room." "I think so," he nodded. "I'll call ahead." I stared out the window. The road dipped, then curved toward familiar landmarks. The old mill, the post office, the quilt shop that had gone online after the pandemic. Life had moved on around me, but I hadn't moved. Not until today. That evening, as I sipped tea in a floral-papered bedroom with a view of the apple trees from afar, I opened the manila folder and spread the documents across the quilt. Deed, bank records, marriage certificate, a handwritten note from Arthur, and a letter addressed to me sealed in his handwriting. Tomorrow I'd call Vince Holloway, our family attorney. Tomorrow I'd begin the process of reclaiming what was mine. But tonight I sat with myself, a woman they tried to erase. And I remembered something Arthur once told me. "Roots run deep, Lil. Even if you cut down the tree, the roots still hold the earth together." They thought they'd removed me. They didn't realize I was the foundation. Morning in Millbridge smells like dew-soaked earth and yesterday's bread. I opened the window of the little room at Hilda's bed and breakfast and let in the chill. Birds were already arguing in the elm tree outside. I watched them for a long while, their wings fluttering in bursts of chaos before settling on stillness again. That's what grief is like, I thought. A series of collisions before silence. Arthur would have loved this morning, cool, blue-skied, the kind that promises a good harvest. I could almost hear him stirring coffee downstairs, whistling some tune from the 60s, pausing only to scan the headlines. Instead, there was only me and a plan. I dressed in the plainest clothes I owned, a navy sweater, loose slacks, shoes, comfortable enough to walk all day in. War clothes, I called them. Not armor in the traditional sense, but I didn't need a breastplate. I had paper, truth, and a name. Lillian Grace Holloway, the woman my children had mistaken for soft. I met Vince Holloway, no relation, just coincidence, at his law office on Main Street. He was an old friend of Arthur's. He'd helped us with our first property purchase, our wills, even Erica's adoption paperwork back in the 80s. A tall man with kind eyes and fingers that always smelled faintly of tobacco. He didn't smile when he saw me. He stood up slowly and reached for my hands. "Lillian," he said gently, "I was hoping you'd call. I've been worried." "I'm fine," I said, even though I wasn't. He nodded. "I heard about the gun situation, Ray told me." Of course he had. In Millbridge, word travels faster than mail. "They left me by the road," I said simply, no drama, with a suitcase and a lie. Vince inhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. "That's elder abandonment, Lillian. It's a criminal offense." I nodded, placing the folder and deed onto his desk. "That's not all," I added. "They forged Arthur's signature, tried to sell the orchard, said it was their right." Vince opened the folder with careful hands. As he read, his jaw tightened. "This deed," he said, "it's solid. Land in your name separate from the main estate. Water rights, too." "Yes," I said. "That section of land feeds the whole property. No developer can build without it." He glanced at me. "They don't know about this, do they?" "No," I replied. "They think I left with nothing but arthritis and a broken heart." Vince leaned back. "What do you want to do?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to stop them. Legally. Fully. I want the orchard back, the house. And I want them to know I am not disposable." He nodded slowly. "That will take time. Maybe press coverage, maybe the county board." "I don't have time," I said. "The sale is closing soon. I need this stop now." Vince made his first call to the county clerk's office requesting a temporary hold on the land transfer. His second call was to the local bank where our accounts had been held for years. He asked for a freeze on any business-related activity pending potential fraud investigation. And then we waited. I stared out his window at the square below, farmers unloading tomatoes, high schoolers in oversized hoodies drinking coffee like adults, a man in a green jacket walking his dog. Life going on. They left me, I whispered, just left me like a used napkin. Vince was silent. I used to think I'd done something wrong, I added, that maybe I spoiled them or didn't teach them gratitude properly. He looked up, and now I know they chose this. And I get to choose too. He smiled a small, proud one. Then let's choose wisely. By noon, the bank had responded. All orchard-related funds were temporarily frozen. Not canceled, not seized, just paused. It was enough to slow them down. Vince then placed a call to a friend at the local paper, the Millbridge Gazette. Her name was Ruth, and I'd once taught her daughter how to bake peach pies in the church kitchen. Tell her everything I said. Name names, just not mine, not yet. He nodded. She's good, she'll dig. While he spoke, I looked down at my hands. These were hands that had bathed babies, cleaned barns, signed mortgages, folded laundry with precision, and now they would carry justice. I wasn't angry, not really. Anger burns too quickly. This was something colder, steadier. Resolve. That evening, I returned to the B&B and sat in the small sitting room by the fireplace. Hilda brought me tea without asking. You know, they've been asking around town about you, she said gently. Let them ask. She hesitated. They're saying you had a breakdown, that you left because you couldn't handle the grief. I smiled into my tea. Let them say that too. What really happened, Lil? I looked up at her eyes, sharp. I stopped being their mother. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Mom, where are you? Please call us. I deleted it. They'd been so certain I would go quietly, that I'd shuffle into a community with crocheted blankets and quiet bingo nights. But I was done going quiet, and the thing about silence when it breaks, it's louder than anything else. The next morning, I stood outside the Gazette building waiting for Ruth. She arrived 10 minutes late, her red hair twisted into a messy bun, notepad in hand. You ready to talk? She asked. I am, I said, but I'm not the story. Then who is? I handed her the forged will copy and pointed to the signatures. This is the story, and the developer trying to buy land that includes protected water access? That's the real scandal. Her eyes lit up like she'd found buried treasure. You're giving me a trail to follow, she said. I'm giving you a truth to expose. That night the town slept, but I didn't. I wrote in my notebook, plans, names, dates, the scholarship fund Arthur and I once talked about, we'd call it the Holloway Harvest Fund. The orchard would stay organic. The land would remain untouched. And the children who tried to steal it, they'd learn that some roots grow deeper than they ever imagined. By Friday morning, Millbridge was already buzzing. They say a small town can't keep a secret. I never wanted to be one. But I did want the truth to grow slowly and reach the right ears like the roots of an old tree seeking water. Not loud, just inevitable. And it was working. I sat on the bench outside Lucille's bakery with a coffee and the latest edition of the Millbridge Gazette. My hands trembled not from age, but from memory. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere in the article. Just the details of forged will, a contested land sale, protected water rights, a developer pushing for a quick deal. But everyone who mattered knew it was me. Lucille appeared beside me, flour still dusting her apron. She handed me a warm croissant and didn't speak for a full minute. Then she said good. One word, heavy with approval. By noon, Jonathan and Erica had called 6 times. I didn't answer. But I listened to the voicemails. Each one was a variation on a theme: confusion, concern, denial, and finally panic. Mom, we saw the article. What are you doing? You're embarrassing the family. There's no fraud. We followed Dad's wishes. And then Erica's voice, soft pleading. Mom, I didn't know everything. I was scared. I thought this would help us both. Help. She kept using that word as if pushing me out of my own life was a form of care. I deleted the messages and walked to Vince's office. He was already standing when I entered, phone to his ear, waving me in. I understand, he said into the receiver. We'll respond officially by Monday. No, she won't be speaking directly to the developers. He hung up, sighed, and turned to me. Platinum Holdings isn't happy. Neither am I replied. They sent a letter this morning, not quite a threat, not quite a denial, just noise. Let them make noise, we'll plant seeds. He slid a manila envelope toward me. Inside were the forms for an emergency injunction 1 level higher than the hold we'd already placed. A step closer to litigation. Once we file this, things get public, he warned. Your kids will know they're named. Good, I said. They need to be. He studied me for a long moment. You're steady. I met his gaze. Steady is all I have left. By afternoon, I was back at the farmhouse. Not inside, I wasn't ready for that, but I stood at the edge of the orchard just beyond the gate. The grass was longer than usual. No one had trimmed the hedges. The barn door hung ajar, signs of carelessness of something precious being treated like clutter. I closed my eyes and remembered Arthur painting that barn door red the year Jonathan turned 6. Jonathan had dipped his tiny hands into the bucket and left prints along the side. Arthur never painted over them. Memories belong in the wood, he'd said. Let them settle in. I hadn't realized how deep they'd gone until my children tried to erase them. That evening I stayed with Lucille. Her guest room smelled like cloves and lemon oil, and the quilt was one I'd helped her make back when we were both new mothers. She made soup. I barely touched it. You're going to win, she said quietly. That's not what this is. Then what is it? I looked down at my hands, at the way my thumb curled now from the arthritis, at the scars I didn't remember getting. And I said, this is me standing still so they can't move me. Lucille nodded. She understood. The next morning, Erica showed up at the bakery. Lucille stiffened when she saw her through the window. Do you want me to send her away? No, I said, let her come. Erica walked in wearing sunglasses and a scarf like someone trying not to be seen while desperately wanting to be noticed. She sat across from me at the corner table, her lip trembling. Mom, I said nothing. I didn't know what Jonathan planned. Not all of it. I didn't know he was going to. She stopped. To leave you like that. You didn't stop him. I was scared. We needed the money, my debts. You could have come to me like a daughter. I didn't think you'd help. I sipped my tea. You were right. Erica flinched. I came to apologize, she said. No, you came because the article scared you. She didn't deny it. You taught me to be kind, she whispered, to forgive. I taught you to bake too, but you don't do that anymore either. She looked up, then her mouth parting like she wanted to protest, but there was nothing to say. Do you want money? I asked. She blinked. What? Is that why you're here? No, she said too quickly. I came to ask if we could fix things. I leaned forward. Some things break in ways that can't be repaired. You don't get to set fire to the bridge and then ask why you can't cross it. Her shoulders slumped. I was stupid. You were greedy. Tears welled in her eyes, but I'd seen them before. This time I didn't feel the pull. I didn't feel the guilt. I felt peace. I still love you, I said, but that love will live at a distance now. Far enough that you can't hurt me again. Erica nodded slowly. She understood. She didn't like it, but she understood. The next day, I returned to Vince's office with a signed statement from Ruth, the journalist, confirming her investigation had revealed inconsistencies in the sale filings and potential violations of local conservation laws. It was enough. The injunction was filed. The orchard for now was safe. And the town was watching. In Millbridge, we don't use words like scandal. We say, oh dear, and we whisper over produce bins and at quilting circles. But I knew those whispers now carried something else. Not shame, support, a quiet, persistent backing that I could feel in the way people greeted me. In the way Lucille tucked extra pastries into my bag. In the way Ray handed me a small envelope of cash from a few folks who believe you shouldn't pay these lawyers alone. That night I lit a candle for Arthur. And I promised him I would finish this. Not for revenge, for restoration. It was Tuesday afternoon when I saw Jonathan again, properly face to face. I'd seen glimpses of him before through bakery windows and the windshield of Ray's truck, but this was different. This was deliberate. He showed up at Vince's office unannounced, still wearing the suit from his last job interview, if I had to guess. Not that he mentioned it, just that desperate, hollow look of someone who'd run out of backup plans. He walked into the waiting room like he owned the place. I was already there sipping coffee that had gone cold. Vince had stepped out to take a call, so we were alone. Jonathan looked at me and stopped short, as if he'd expected to be greeted by a lawyer, not a mother. Mom, he said, voice low, I didn't know you'd be here. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stood slowly and with purpose and faced him fully. He looked tired, older. There were dark hollows under his eyes and a nervous twitch in his jaw he used to have as a teenager before finals. But what surprised me most? I didn't feel hatred. I didn't feel anything at all. Why are you here, Jonathan? I asked calmly. I wanted to talk to Vince, to you if you'll let me. I'm listening. He cleared his throat and glanced at the office door. I think we got off on the wrong foot. The article, the injunction, it's all gotten out of control. I raised an eyebrow. Out of control, you left me on the side of a county road with a suitcase and no goodbye. This is control, just not yours. He winced, then tried to smile. You're right, he admitted. We made mistakes, but I want to fix this. No, Jonathan, I said, still calm. You want to control the damage? That's not the same thing. He looked down at his shoes. I talked to Erica, he mumbled. She said you listened to her. I listened, I agreed, I didn't agree. His voice dropped even lower. I didn't forge anything, Mom, I swear. The document, it was real. It was signed. He said that like it was some kind of proof, some kind of absolution. But I had been married to Arthur Holloway for 47 years. And I knew when something smelled like truth and when it smelled like convenience. Do you really want to talk about that signature? I asked. He looked up, startled. Because I've seen it. I've studied it. I moved slowly to my purse and pulled out an old letter one Arthur had written by hand just 2 weeks before he passed. His penmanship was shaky, his loops softer like a man trying to remember how to write through the fog of medication. Then I pulled out the signed will Jonathan had presented. The signature was flawless, too flawless. Clean lines, steady ink, no hesitation, not even a wobble. Arthur couldn't hold a pen without shaking by that point, I said. We both know it. Jonathan's lips parted, but he didn't speak. I may have arthritis now, but my eyes are still sharp. That's not his hand. A long silence fell between us. Then he finally whispered, He signed it before the pain got too bad. I had him sign it early. No, I said gently, you didn't. He looked up sharply. You didn't because Arthur and I sat together one night not long before he lost the ability to speak in full sentences, and we talked about the future, the orchard, you, Erica, everything. I moved closer, lowering my voice. And do you know what he said, Jonathan? He didn't respond. He said, they're not ready. They don't understand the land. They'd sell it in a heartbeat. Jonathan's face drained of color. He never changed the will, I continued. He told me he wouldn't. Not because he didn't love you, he did, but because he knew you wouldn't honor it. Mom, he trusted me, I said. Me, not a signature on a page, not a name typed onto a PDF from a fancy office in some city I've never even visited. He looked like a boy again then. Not the man in the overpriced watch and tailored shirt, but the boy who once hid under the porch during thunderstorms, shaking with fear, until Arthur scooped him up and carried him inside. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he whispered. That's always how betrayal starts, I replied, with people not meaning to, but meaning doesn't undo the knife. Just then Vince returned. He paused when he saw us, then gave a small nod as if to say, this is yours to finish. Jonathan turned to him, scrambling to change the topic. I came to sign the withdrawal papers, to void the claim. I want it over. Vince stepped behind his desk. That's wise, he said. We'll process the documents this afternoon. Jonathan reached for a pen, his fingers trembling. But before he could sign, I spoke again. One condition. He froze. You walk away from the orchard, forever. No stake, no royalties. You renounce everything and you leave this town. He looked at me stunned. Mom, no interviews, no side deals. You disappear from this land like you never set foot on it. That's the only path that doesn't end in court. Jonathan looked between me and Vince. His mouth opened, then shut, then opened again. And finally he nodded. Okay. After he left, Vince turned to me with a soft look in his eyes. You were firm. I had to be. You still love him. I always will, I said. But love doesn't mean you let someone burn the house down while they smile at you. Later that night, I sat with Lucille again, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, listening to the soft tick of her old grandfather clock. She said nothing, just waited. So I spoke. Arthur never forgave his brother for selling their father's land. Lucille raised an eyebrow. They fought about it once. Arthur never told me what was said, but I remember the way his hands shook when he came home. That's when he started making copies of everything, keeping extras, planning ahead. She nodded slowly. He knew this could happen. I nodded back, but he believed I'd stop it if it ever did. Lucille reached over and placed her hand over mine. You have. And that night, for the first time since Arthur died, I slept without waking in the dark, reaching for someone who wasn't there. Because I was there. Fully. And for the first time in a long time, I was enough. By the following weekend, Millbridge was blooming. Not just with daffodils and cherry blossoms, though the trees did look lovely, but with whispers, affirmations, and something more powerful than gossip understanding. The town had made its choice, and I wasn't the story of a bitter old widow anymore. I was the woman who stood her ground. The Millbridge Gazette ran a follow-up headline. Developer backs down amid inheritance controversy, local orchard preserved. Ruth had written it with precision and grace. She never used my name, never dragged Jonathan or Erica through the mud, but the facts were there, just visible enough between the lines. People read it. People remembered. At the hardware store, someone left a handwritten note inside my shopping bag. "We're with you. Always were." At the church potluck, Mrs. Adler passed me a fresh apple pie and said he'd be proud. She didn't have to say who. We both knew. Even kids from the local school came to the orchard gate one afternoon, 3 of them barely teens asking if they could volunteer for the season. For extra credit, they said. But I saw the way they looked at the trees, curious, almost reverent. Arthur would have cried seeing it. I hired Lisa Brennan Martin's daughter to help me run things full-time. She was smart, capable, and asked the right questions. Not about profits, about soil pH grafting season and the new compost system I'd mentioned offhand one morning. Lisa reminded me of a younger version of myself, someone who loved the land not for what it could sell, but for what it could grow. Together, we walked the Southern Acres, My Acres, and marked off spots for expansion. Not bigger, just better. A small educational greenhouse, a local produce co-op, maybe a bakery stand again. Nothing grand, just good, just real. That same week, I drafted a letter to the Agricultural Board requesting a permanent conservation easement for the full orchard. The document would bind the land beyond my lifetime, beyond my children's reach, should they ever dare to return. "I want to make this official," I told Vince. "No future sale, no zoning loopholes. This place feeds more than mouths, it feeds the spirit." He nodded, and I saw something in his eyes, a glint of admiration I hadn't seen since Arthur's funeral. "You're rebuilding," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I'm remembering." A few nights later, I held a small dinner at the orchard barn, the first gathering we'd had there since Arthur passed. The tables were plain, the lights strung gently from rafter to rafter. The food came from neighbors, friends, farmers I'd once helped in little ways that I thought they'd forgotten. They hadn't. We broke bread, we shared stories. When I stood to speak, the barn fell quiet. I took a breath. I was raised to believe that family was blood, I said. But lately I've learned that it's more than that. Family is who shows up when your name has no value left to offer, when your house is empty, when your orchard's gate creaks and the fence needs mending. I paused, letting the weight of silence do its work. I lost something when Arthur died, but I gained something too. I gained clarity, and I gained all of you. A few people wept, most just nodded, the kind of nod you only earn after 40 years of being seen. After dinner, Lisa tapped her glass gently. "Mrs. Holloway," she said, smiling, "I know you don't like surprises, but we wanted to show you something." She led me outside and everyone followed. Out in the eastern field, under the moonlight, stood a young apple tree newly planted no taller than a child. A wooden plaque sat in the dirt beside it. It read, "In memory of Arthur Holloway and in honor of Lillian who refused to fall." I reached out and touched the bark. It was still soft, still learning. Just like me. The next day, Erica called again. I let it ring. Then I listened to her message. "Mom, I heard about the dinner. I saw pictures. You look happy, and I'm glad for that. I miss you. I really do." She paused, sniffled. "I know I messed up. I know I broke something. But if there's ever a way back, even if it takes time, I'll wait." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry." Then silence. I didn't delete the message. I didn't call back either. Not yet. A few weeks passed. Life settled into a new rhythm. Morning walks, orchard planning meetings, tea with Lucille every Tuesday. And then one ordinary morning in May, a letter arrived. Thick envelope, no return address, handwritten. Inside was a note from Jonathan. "No please, no excuses, just a check unsigned and a one-line message. For the land I never understood and the woman I never deserved." I folded the letter and tucked it away, not to forgive, but to remember. To remember that sometimes remorse grows slow and sometimes too late. In the evenings, I sat on the porch and read books Arthur never finished. I listened to the wind through the trees. I counted the stars when I felt strong enough. I didn't cry much anymore. But when I did, it was soft not from sorrow but from release. A kind of cleansing. The orchard was still mine. But more importantly, I was still mine. It started with a blog post. Lisa's younger sister, a journalism major at the University of Maine, had visited the orchard one weekend. She snapped photos of the trees of the plaque beneath Arthur's tree, of me standing in the barn doorway holding a basket of early bloom pears. She titled the piece, "This woman was left behind by her own family, but she turned silence into power." I didn't even know she'd published it, until the emails started coming. At first they trickled in quiet notes from strangers. "I read about what you did. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. I thought I was alone. Thank you." Your orchard reminds me of my father's vineyard in Vermont. He lost it to greedy relatives. You give me hope. Then the press inquiries began. Local first, then regional, then something bigger. NPR Maine asked for an interview. I said no. I wasn't interested in fame. I didn't need cameras walking through my grief, but Lisa convinced me. Tell your story, she said. Not for them. For the next woman who needs to know she's not disposable. So I sat with a soft-spoken reporter named Julia on the back porch. She didn't ask about my children. She asked about the land, about Arthur, about what it meant to rebuild after betrayal, not with anger, but with dignity. I didn't fight back, I told her. I simply refused to vanish. The segment aired the following Sunday. They titled it Orchard of One, How Lillian Holloway Preserved Her Land and Herself. After that, the orchard phone rang for days. Women called from Michigan, Arizona, Georgia. Some were my age, others younger. Some hadn't spoken to their children in years. One woman said she'd been forced out of her home after her adult kids manipulated her power of attorney. I didn't even know it could happen, she whispered, until I heard your voice on the radio. I cried after that call, not because I was sad, but because I finally understood the scale of what I'd done. My story wasn't rare. It was just rarely spoken. By June, the orchard was getting visitors, not just customers, but pilgrims. Women with silver hair and quiet eyes. Some came alone, some with nurses or friends. One arrived in a wheelchair and insisted on being wheeled to Arthur's tree. She held the bark and said, "You remind me of my sister. She died never being heard. But you made a sound we all felt. We hugged strangers no more." Meanwhile, Erica emailed again. Subject line, I saw the interview. She wrote, I thought I knew who you were. I thought I had the full picture. I didn't. I see it now, not just the orchard, but your fight to be seen. I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but I'd like to come visit, not to stay, just to sit, maybe talk, or not. I'll wait until you say it's okay. I stared at the screen a long time, then closed the laptop. Some doors don't need to be locked. They just need time before they creak open again. Around the same time, a letter arrived from the State Historical Preservation Office. They were nominating Holloway Orchard for the Maine Cultural Landmark Registry not for its architecture, but for its story. For embodying the resilience of Maine's elder women, the letter read, for proving that legacy isn't built in headlines, but in the quiet keeping of what matters. I held that letter for a long while, not because I wanted the recognition, but because it meant they had listened. That Saturday, a local news crew arrived uninvited. I nearly turned them away until I saw the woman behind the camera. She was in her 50s, gray-streaked hair, tied-back notebook, clutched like a lifeline. I'm not here to exploit you, she said. I'm here because my mother died last year and no one noticed. You remind me of her. She would have loved you. I nodded and let her in. She didn't film the trees or the land. She filmed my hands as I tied up tomato vines behind the barn. She filmed Lisa pruning a peach tree. And she filmed the sun setting behind Arthur's plaque, nothing spoken, no music, just the light. The segment aired with no narration. Just a title still standing. Jonathan hadn't reached out again, but I heard from his ex-wife, Helen. Yes, the one he left. She emailed me to say she'd watched every interview. She'd cried through the orchard video, and she wanted me to know. He always feared becoming small, so he made others feel smaller. She thanked me for standing up to him. And then she added, I hope one day your daughter finds the courage you've shown, not just to ask forgiveness, but to become someone who doesn't need it anymore. By mid-July, the orchard's summer harvest came in full. We hosted our first elder women's gathering, an idea Ruth had planted months ago. We didn't advertise it, just spread word through local community boards, Facebook groups, and word of mouth. More than 30 women arrived. Some were from nearby towns, others drove hours. One came from Connecticut. They brought stories, journals, scarves they'd knitted, cookies from long-lost recipes. One brought her wedding veil just to feel like I existed once, she said. We laughed, we cried, and under the trees we held hands and said the names of women we'd lost. Not to death, but to silence, to erasure, to betrayal. The wind carried their names between branches like song. That night, I wrote in my journal the same one I'd started the day after Arthur's funeral. I wrote, Today I saw the truth. I was never alone. I was simply the first one to say it out loud. It was a Thursday morning late August when I saw the silver sedan creeping up the dirt road. I was pruning the sunflowers that bordered the orchard fence bees, dancing in the golden petals when the dust stirred behind the curve, and a familiar unease took root in my chest. The car stopped at the gate but didn't honk. The door opened, a woman stepped out. Tall, slender, neat cardigan over a pale blouse, her hair darker now pulled into a bun that seemed too tight for a humid day. It was Erica, my daughter, the one who hadn't spoken to me in 14 months, the one who'd called me a financial liability, the one who'd walked out of my life the moment I stopped being useful. She didn't wave. She just stood there, eyes locked on me across the open field. We might as well have been continents apart. I didn't run to her. I didn't turn away either. I finished tying the last sunflower stalk to its support, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked to the gate. Not fast, not slow, just steady. She didn't say anything at first. Her eyes were rimmed red, though she wasn't crying. Her voice when it came was smaller than I remembered. Not the executive voice, not the mother of two voice, just Erica. I didn't come to fight, she said. I nodded. Good. I don't entertain wars on my property anymore. That broke something, a small twitch of a smile in her cheek, or guilt, or both. She asked if she could come in. I said yes, but I didn't offer tea, not yet. We walked through the orchard in silence, past Arthur's tree, past the lavender rose where the bees hummed like 1,000 tiny engines of peace. At the bench under the old walnut, I finally sat. She stood a while longer, then joined me. Still quiet, until she spoke. I watched all the interviews. I didn't respond. She added, "You didn't name us. You could have, but you didn't." Still, I said nothing, because sometimes silence is the most honest reply. She reached into her bag and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "I wrote this 3 times," she said. "Burn the first 2. This one, I don't know if it's right, but it's the least selfish version I could manage." She didn't hand it to me, just placed it on the bench between us. I didn't touch it. Instead, I asked, "Why now?" She looked out toward the orchard, eyes squinting against the morning sun. "Because I lost a client last week. She was in her 70s, had no family, no will, no assets, just a cat. And when I called her emergency contact, it was her former student, a man who said, 'She taught me to read. I owe her my whole life.' That night I realized, I've never owed you. I've only taken and called it love." The words fell like stones in a well. Deep, final. I didn't speak right away. When I did, my voice came out lower than I meant it to. "It wasn't the money, Erica. It was that you made me feel exchangeable." She closed her eyes. "I know. You treated me like an expired coupon, as if kindness had a due date." "I know," she whispered again. "And when I didn't fold, you walked." She nodded. No excuse, no argument. Just acknowledgement. That at least was new. "I never hated you," I said after a long pause, "but I stopped trying to make you see me." Erica's voice cracked. "I do see you. Now. And I don't deserve a place here. I know that." She stood. "I just wanted to say that, in person, so you could forget me properly if you wanted." I surprised us both when I reached for her wrist. "Wait." She froze. "You don't get to come back into my life like a storm, and you don't get to leave like fog either. Not anymore." She turned toward me unsure. "What then?" I took a breath. "You come back like roots, slow, silent, and with work." "I don't expect to be forgiven," she said. "Good," I replied. "Then maybe we have a chance." That night, I read her letter. Twice. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a performance either. She admitted things I never thought I'd hear her say. She apologized not just for what she did, but for what she didn't understand until too late. And for the first time, I saw her not as the daughter I'd raised, but as a woman still learning how to love without condition. I didn't call her the next day. I waited. Let time breathe. 2 days later, she sent a photo. A pear tree sapling, with the message for planting if you want, no expectations. I smiled, then texted back, "You'll need gloves, soil here's stubborn." The sapling arrived 3 days later. Wrapped in burlap and soft twine, its roots tucked gently into a box marked "Live Plant, Handle with Care." Erica hadn't signed the shipping form, but the sender address said enough Denver CO. That morning, the ground was still soft from overnight rain. I stood at the edge of the orchard, that little tree cradled in my arms, like something fragile and half forgiven. Its young leaves trembled in the wind, or maybe that was just me. I chose a spot near Arthur's tree, not too close, not too far. A place for beginnings that didn't demand a finish line. I didn't tell Erica I'd planted it, but she must have known, because the next weekend she returned, this time unannounced but not unwelcome. She wore jeans and sneakers. No more tight bun or crisp blazers. Just a woman with dirt under her fingernails and uncertainty in her shoulders. "I brought gloves," she said at the gate. "Good," I replied. "The soil's still stubborn." We worked in silence at first. Weeds, stones, a few patches of thistle. I handed her a spade, then a trowel. She didn't ask what to do. She watched and mirrored. That used to frustrate me, how she never asked, only performed. But now it felt different. Less theatrical. More tender. At lunch, I made grilled cheese. She laughed when she saw the pan. You still use that old cast iron. It's honest, I said. Doesn't pretend to be nonstick. We sat on the porch and ate like we used to. Between bites, she told me about her girls, how Ava was obsessed with puzzles now, and Junie had memorized an entire book about bees. She'd love it here, Erica added, glancing toward the garden. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. That night, we didn't talk about then. We stayed in the present, the safest place when wounds are still fresh. I showed her how to mulch around the roots. She asked about compost. I taught her how to check the moisture by feel, not guesswork. Before bed, she whispered, "Thanks for letting me try." And for once, I didn't tell her she didn't have to thank me. Because she did, and that mattered. Over the next few weeks, she came back. Sometimes for a day, sometimes overnight, never empty-handed. Seed packets, fresh honey from a market. One time, just a book she thought I'd like, the sound of a wild snail eating. We didn't rush it. No declarations, no deep confessions, just repairs. The kind made with presence, not apology. One Sunday morning, she arrived with her daughters. Ava was 6, bright-eyed and inquisitive. Junie was 3, sticky with jelly and impossible not to adore. They called me Grandma without hesitation, as if the world hadn't split in half for a time, as if the years I spent forgotten were simply a long nap they'd waded through. I cried later, not in front of them, just in the kitchen where I used to cry alone. This time it felt different. The tears didn't taste like grief. They tasted like thaw. The girls fell in love with the orchard. Junie named the pear tree Button, because it's cute and round and it makes me feel happy. Who was I to argue with joy? At night, we sat around a fire pit I hadn't used in years. Erica roasted marshmallows with the same nervous intensity she once applied to board meetings. The girls curled beside me, half asleep. Erica watched them, her face soft in the glow. "They deserve this version of you," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "They deserve this version of us." She looked at me, then really looked. For the first time in a decade, I saw her as the girl who once clung to my leg at kindergarten drop-off. Not the lawyer. Not the adult who'd hurt me. Just my child. Broken in places, yes, but mending too. A few weeks later, a letter arrived. This time from Junie. Scrawled in purple crayon, it read, "Dear Grandma Button is doing good. Ava said trees don't hug, but I think they do if you wait long. I love you like peanut butter. Come visit." I pinned it to the fridge, right next to a photo from 1998, Erica, age 11, missing her front teeth, beaming beside a scarecrow we made from Arthur's overalls. History full circle. One evening, while pruning the rose bushes, Erica asked, "Do you think Arthur would have forgiven me?" I paused, clipped one last bloom, then turned to her. Arthur didn't believe in revenge, only gardens. He'd say if something's still growing, it's worth tending. She nodded. "Then I'll keep tending." We never had a dramatic reconciliation. No slow-motion embrace or tearful montage. What we had was real, imperfect, earned, and every morning when I walked past Button's sapling, I smiled. Because the orchard doesn't lie. Things that bloom here, they bloom because someone stayed. Someone chose to return. I don't believe in perfect endings. Not anymore. When you've lived as long as I have, you stop expecting life to tie things up with ribbons. You learn that peace doesn't arrive with trumpets or grand gestures. Sometimes peace is just having your name said kindly after years of silence, or watching a sapling grow where there was once a wound, or hearing little feet run through your home again, this time with permission, not just memory. The house didn't change much. It still creaked when the wind blew hard from the west. The same photograph of Arthur and I in the orchard hung above the fireplace, a little more faded now. But something in the air shifted. Lighter. Less haunted, like the walls no longer needed to remember the things that weren't said. I began teaching Ava how to bake pie crust from scratch. She was too impatient to chill the dough properly. "It's fine, Grandma. I like chewy crust." "Chewy crust is an insult to tradition," I teased. She laughed and flour puffed across her nose. Erica watched from the doorway one afternoon, her hands full of groceries, her eyes full of something softer than guilt. Gratitude, maybe, or just relief. We never fully addressed those missing years. Not in one grand sit-down, but in moments scattered and gentle. Like when she found my old journals in the attic and didn't pry, just dusted them off and placed them on my nightstand. Or when I asked about her husband and she said simply, "He left last spring, couldn't handle how much I missed what I'd buried." And I nodded, because I knew the feeling. There was no need for revenge. That used to surprise me, how after everything, the eviction, the betrayal, the months of silence, I didn't want to punish her. I just wanted my place back. Not the house, my place. In their lives, in their memories, in the shape of their days. And somehow that mattered more than retribution. One autumn morning, Erica stood beside me in the orchard, coffee in hand. Junie was chasing leaves. Ava was collecting acorns. Erica said, "Do you ever wonder what your life would have looked like if you hadn't let me back in?" I didn't answer right away. The wind carried the scent of cinnamon and earth. I sipped my coffee. Then I said, "I think I'd still have peace, but not joy." She blinked. Tears welled, the kind you don't fight because they mean something true has been spoken. People ask me now when I tell my story, and yes, I tell it if I forgave her. I tell them this. Forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a garden, and sometimes you water it even when you're not sure anything will bloom. Some days I still feel the ache of what was lost. But it doesn't own me anymore. It doesn't define me. A few months ago, I recorded a video for a local storytelling group. Just a short one, 5 minutes, about strength and silence. It went viral. Thousands of women wrote in. Some said you told my story. Others said I didn't know I was allowed to choose peace over punishment. One woman, 83, wrote, "Thank you. I thought I'd missed my chance to be seen." That's when I realized something. My story didn't end with Erica's apology, or with reclaiming the house, or even with the granddaughters who now painted their names in chalk on my driveway. It ended and began with me choosing myself, choosing to live out loud again, choosing to write the final chapter with my own pen. Arthur used to say, "The most powerful sentence in any book is the last one, because it tells you whether the story meant something." I think he was wrong. It's not the last sentence, it's the last word. And the last word, dear reader, is mine. I choose home.